Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ICE71 Expert Series live webcast. I'm Leo, CEO of Sem Forensics, and this is Alan, our CTO.
Hi.
We're a proud member of the ICE71 Scale program, and we're broadcasting right now from a kitchen under the current work from home policies. Hope everyone out there is safe and well. For the first 20 minutes, we'll be discussing the things you probably never knew about email spoofing, which should help you keep ahead of the cyber criminals trying to impersonate your brand in order to pry sensitive information or hard cash from your business contacts. You'll learn why it's still so prevalent despite all the modern defensive systems. Then with that root cause identified, how to harden your organization against it from a technology perspective. The last 10 minutes will be a Q&A session. So if you have any questions as we speak, please do input it into the Q&A. It's a little button on the bottom of your Zoom window, and we'll try to address it at the end of our session. So, ready? Off we go. I'm going to start with a little description about why, with all the advanced AI and machine learning based defensive systems, why are we still getting these email impersonated messages in users' inboxes? Surprisingly, it's all down to what your organization is sending out. So to explain that a little better, a little further, we have to look at these defensive systems. And these are systems like your commercial defensive systems, like Office, Exchange, online protection, got things like Barracuda or Cisco Ironport, any defensive inbound anti-spam, anti-phishing system, even with the consumer ones like Gmail or Yahoo, they've all got these spam filtering, anti-phishing systems built in to stop those emails reaching your users. Now, they're all they all have something in common, which is the way that they are able to do this. The technologies they're based on, they could be neural nets, they could be Bayesians, they could be a combination of both. Whatever the underlying technology, they all have to be trained. So they have to be trained on what is a legitimate email and what isn't. And that's everything else. That could be phishing emails, that could be spoofing, it could be just common garden spam, this kind of stuff. So they all have to have that training in place. We shall now illustrate it a little bit now with the help from Alan, who is going to be our neural net, which kind of is, given he's mostly human. So we're going to pretend that this is one of those systems, any one of those systems. This is what your customers, your suppliers, your partners are all sitting behind. When they receive an email, it goes through one of these systems. And these systems have to be trained. So instead of email, to make it a bit more obvious, we're going to use sheep or not sheep. So a sheep is a legitimate email. Not sheep is anything else. And this is how it works when we train. So I'm going to start training this system. There you go. That is a sheep. Sheep. This, also a sheep. Sheep. This, not a sheep.
Not a sheep.
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 Not a sheep. But I'm not going to tell the system that.
Not a sheep.
Awesome. So this system has had a base level of training. Now, obviously, commercial systems are trained off huge corpuses of this kind of information, these big data sets. And then once they reach a base level, then they go out there. But it doesn't stop there, because these systems, they have to continue learning all the time and responding to what's happening in the global environment. Because there'll be different types of email flying around all the time, and different types of attacks, different types of phishing, spoofing, BEC, etc. And they will catch on to different kind of global events. I mean, obviously, right now we've got COVID, and so there'll be people taking advantage of the kind of fear and panic, which is a very effective system for getting people to click on things without thinking a little bit first. So these systems will be more sensitive to strings even involving COVID or coronavirus, etc., etc. So they learn on the fly, and usually they learn by being fed different types of spam and phishing attacks, etc., etc. Now, the problem is also due to this, but it's by what is coming out of legitimate companies. So, I mean, the email itself is you know, it came from an altruistic background. You know, it was designed as a sort of a sibling of the World Wide Web. It's supposed to be an instant, open, free communication channel, point to point, anywhere in the world that anyone can use. Brilliant. But obviously, people started using it for nefarious purposes. So the panic was, oh, great. Now we have to bolt on security afterwards, which has always been email's fundamental problem. It wasn't secure by design. So to send an email now is very easy, but to secure it properly is actually kind of difficult. And most companies don't do what they can do to separate themselves from any ability to be counterfeited. So I mean, what they will do is get a system working, start sending email, maybe put on the easiest types they can, but that's about it. But email globally has this problem because even like the protocol called TLS, which is what happens in a conversation between servers when they decide to send each other an email. They'll have a chat, and generally, more often than not, TLS is what we call opportunistic. So it'll say, "Oh, are you TLS? If so, let's do TLS. Let's send this encrypted in transit." But if neither of them are, if one of them isn't, then they will immediately default to just sending that email insecure. So it's security if it's there, but we'll send it anyway if it's not, and that's a problem. So what happens with these kind of defensive systems when they are sent legitimate email from a company that is just sending email any old how, which is unfortunately most companies? This is the kind of situation, and this is how, because they are learning all the time, they learn from engagement training between themselves and what the legitimate company is sending them and what they pass their users. They're learning all the time. So this is kind of how it goes. So I'm a legitimate company. I'm sending an email. There you go. It's a sheep.
Not a sheep.
No, it's a sheep.
Sheep.
Good. There you go. Another sheep.
Sheep.
Oh, and there you go. Have another one.
Sheep.
So therein lies the problem. Now, when an attacker comes on who wants to copy those emails and make them even more legitimate looking, it's not hard to do.
Sheep.
And now we have a breach. So it's what you're sending out that carries your brand, that on behalf of your companies, which is training these systems and global systems like it, what to expect from your mailing systems. And if they're full of what we call forensic faults, so anything that looks squiffy to a inbound defensive system, the inbound defensive system is forced to still take that in. So it learns. So if you want to then spoof that company, it becomes surprisingly easy. So what can you kind of do? I mean, and what constitutes a fault in an email or an email system? This bit is much more complicated because you have faults in infrastructure, emails themselves, the code, content, links, the domains, DNS, all these kind of things factor in when a defensive system is weighing up whether an email is legitimate or not. But the key thing is there are things that legitimate companies can do that spammers or attackers can't. So there are, what we would say initially, there's the main email authentication standards like SPF, DKIM, DMARC, which is recommended now. It's slowly grown over the years. It's like a directly for email spoofing prevention with direct domain attacks. It's effective in some cases of attacks. But it's there, and it should be used because it's another layer of defense for a company. But it's another way of saying to a defensive system, it's another tick in the kind of legitimate box. So all of these kind of attempts are there to try and guarantee the origin of an email, guarantee that in transit it's not been affected or messed around with in any way, and then it reaches the correct user. So there's a bunch of things you can do, but it is difficult. It does require some effort, some expertise, but luckily there are things out there that can help you. There's at least one system we know that can map out your network infrastructure and remove these faults from your email and different sending systems. I forget the name. But you can ask the good people at ICE, or you can visit our website and we can point you in the right direction. That's semforensics.com. But in the meantime, I mean, what can you do? What can you add to your security policy, or what can you do to check your kind of exposure levels and harden your infrastructure against this kind of spoofing attacks? I mean, we would say audit your systems first of all. You've got to find out, in a large organization, you've got so many different sending systems. Likely you've got CRMs, you've got transactional systems, you might have like Office 365, et cetera, all these different systems are sending emails carrying your brand from your company, and all of these have to be looked at to make sure they're not tricking defensive systems into making the wrong decisions. And then you roll out at least the basic authentications, SPF, DKIM, DMARC, and TLS on your MTAs. And these basic authentications are really becoming more and more important, and not just for preventing spoofing, this kind of stuff, but for compliance as well. So we've got like the US government at the end of 2018, they made it a mandatory directive for all of their ministries to implement basic authentications and TLS across the board. And that's very difficult to do, especially for the second largest organization in the world. So it is difficult, but like you said, you can get help. Well, like I said, anyway, so you can roll out the authentication. The third thing is secure your DNS. The DNS, domain name system, the domain name servers are basically your kind of, it's basically the area that you have to keep sacrosanct because they are very heavily involved in the various email authentication standards. So they have to be very well protected. You could roll out DNSSEC if it's possible within your organization, but you just make sure your DNS can't be corrupted, etc., because that could mess things up. I mean, in summary to all this, you've got to make it as hard as possible for attackers to counterfeit your brand, your emails. And it all depends on what you're sending out there and training these systems to let in and discard. That's kind of it. You reap what you sow, effectively. So I think we've got quite a few questions coming in now. And I think we will hand it over to Q&A time. So we've got what have we got?
The first one over here. What is the difference between phishing and spoofing?
Aha. Well, that's phishing can be any attempt to pull out information from a user, information or money, or it's tricking a user into giving up something that they don't have, and it's not necessarily just restricted to email. There's SMS smishing and all this kind of stuff. Spoofing is simply a subset of phishing. So spoofing is where you intentionally impersonate someone or something to do that extraction of information. What else have we got here?
Yeah, guys, while we're going, feel free to send in any more questions that you have. We'll address as many as we can in the next while.
So we've got here, what are measures one can take to not fall scam to COVID-19 phishing activities?
Okay. Well, what we have to remember is that scammers and phishers, they are very opportunistic. So whatever is in the current global landscape, they're going to try and use any kind of means, whether it's fear or whether it's some kind of entertainment, to get you to interact with one of their mails. So for example, when World Cup is out, there's a lot of emails about World Cup related things and watching free videos and that sort of thing. There was the very big Ashley Madison scandal, and people who feared that they may have been compromised would engage with phishers' emails to hand out information. So the phishers' job is to try and solicit information from you in a way that they'll have the highest success rate. And at the moment, there is a lot of fear surrounding COVID, a lot of misinformation, and a lot of people are very nervous. And as such, people might not think as much or take as much precaution when receiving something about COVID. So in order to protect ourselves with COVID-19 scenario, as well as any of the others, you have to be a little more cautious when interacting with emails and information regarding COVID. Don't do any call to action, such as handing over information or credit card details or purchasing something directly from one of these emails. If you're unsure about the information that's been provided, you need to try and find your local government website where that provides information about the current situation, where it will sift between the facts and the non-facts, and rather use that as your medium of getting information or reaching out for information, rather than performing any kind of action or call of action that an email might be asking you to do, such as click here for instant insurance. There may be legitimate companies doing that, but there for sure are a lot of companies that are out there just to try and scam you and get you to hand over information that you shouldn't. So as a general rule, never, ever, ever give your personal information out in a form from an email or a form that an email links to. Yeah, because that's usually a way, and never, ever passwords. Banks will usually say they'll never ask you for your PIN or your password through email. Don't trust that for any email, not even from your system administrator. You're going to ask them face to face. Those are some of the steps that you can take to prevent yourselves. Stay safe.
Oh, we got another question, slightly more technical one. We've got, how do we detect the IP address of the spoofer? So there is a reporting protocol, which is part of the authentication protocol called DMARC. And that allows you to kind of process information provided by receiving ISPs worldwide. And you'll be able to investigate and find out the IP address of somebody spoofing your domains worldwide. Now, it's not that easy to do, obviously, but the information is there, and there are systems available, ours included, which can process this information for you and we also run a forensics on it to figure out whether it's a threat to you or whether it's a legitimate system sending that you need to lock down or not. But there are ways to do that now with the DMARC protocol.
Okay, good.
So we've got another one here. We've got, is email spoofing as prevalent with small businesses?
Well, small businesses, I think, are in some ways a lot more vulnerable to phishing attacks. Why is this? Yes, the big corporates have got a lot of money, but they also have money to spend on very sophisticated security systems, protocols, and steps in place, training, for example, whereas small companies might not have that access to the the more sophisticated security options, or they might not be aware of some of the providers out there that are now starting to help guys in that bracket of the SME bracket. So that because they might not have that same kind of protection, and also within the company, they might not have the right kind of protocols to follow. For example, in a big corporate, there will be a proper procedure to go for making payments to a provider, for example, a change of payment details process. Whereas in a smaller organization, a lot of things are just done as and when they come up, handed off to whoever they are, even if there are dedicated departments for these things. But very cleverly, phishers will go into a smaller company's website, find out information like who the main finance person is or who the CEO is, and craft and engineer attacks that look like personal emails coming from the CEO to the financer to make payment to another company. There might not be all the protocols in place. And so small businesses, even though they might not be able to give up as much of money in a single chunk, they're more susceptible to being hit. And if a scammer can go and take small amounts from smaller businesses, there are some smaller businesses that are too embarrassed to even disclose that they've lost money in this way. And it's a very effective way for phishers and scammers to solicit funds or whatever it is that they are. So yes, very much so. If you're a smaller business, it is just as essential, if not more essential, to look after yourself, protect yourself.
Cool. Well, we got a pretty cool question here. Why is SIM Forensic System better? That didn't come from us. Well, so there are ways to harden your own sending infrastructure, and there are the best practices like the authentication protocols undoubtedly help. But the difficulty is finding out those faults that defensive systems recognize as problematic, that cause your email to be scrutinized more heavily. These faults, because of the way these systems work, they can say, yes, this is a sheep or this is not a sheep, but they can't very easily tell you why, because that's how these neural nets work. I mean, our system, for example, after locking down the basic authentications, rolling out DMARC, and all the rest of it, will also it's been designed to forensically analyze everything to do with the infrastructure, the content, the domain reputations of an email, and spit out at the current point in time, because these things change depending on what's happening in the global environment. They'll say, okay, right now these are the faults in your system, and this is what you need to fix. So that for us is why it is what our system can do over and above rolling out these basic authentications. And so we make sure that at any one time your organization is sending out emails as forensically clean as possible. But thanks for the question.
All right, there is another one over here. What's the next trend you see coming up for email security? That's a good question, though.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I mean, on the kind of commercial offering side, there's these systems. Obviously, BEC, Business Email Compromise, is a very prevalent channel for sending these attacks, because if you hijack an email box within a company, which is effectively what BEC is, you take that account within the company and then you send emails from it. So this could be coming from a fully authenticated account. So when there's only small things that have been changed in these emails, so it's very hard to detect the faults, the attacks. So there's these systems which sit inside the networks now, which kind of do behavioral analysis to say, okay, so very often you send from one business unit to accounts payable the same email with the same like account number, for example. Now these behavioral systems are there to say that if that account number is just changed to a different one from a hijacked BEC, those behavioral systems can kick in and say, hey, something has changed from the normal patterns. Again, these are ML systems, and they work in the same way as the defensive gateways. So they can be helped if you make sure that all the emails you send are clean. So these tiny little fault signatures can be identified by the behavioral analysis systems, the incoming gateways. So that's one thing on the commercial side, which is coming out. There's also new protocols that are being developed all the time to strengthen email itself. There's new ones like there's BIMI, there's ARC, there's Dane. There's a bunch of different ones, but they're all there to confirm origin, make sure nothing's been messed with in transit, and confirm recipient. And they can kind of keep the integrity of any other authentications complete across the journey. Yeah, that's what we see coming up now.
We have 5 minutes left till the end, so I think maybe we can do one more question and then we'll wrap it up for you guys. The question is, what is the most common form of email spoofing and the cleverest disguise that we should be looking out for? That's a good question, because obviously scams and phish, they're opportunistic. They're going to come in all sorts of ways. But I'd say things like PayPal and DHL, at any one point in time, there are going to be thousands of people expecting a delivery from DHL or a delivery service or something like that. And if you happen to be one of the people expecting a delivery and you happen to receive one of these phishing emails, you're very likely to compromise yourself and your organization by interacting with that. So the common forms and the cleverest disguises are those that make it look as original as possible from the company that you expect to be dealing with. They wrap it up so nicely, and if, for example, that company hasn't been sending the best quality authenticated emails, the defensive gateways are trained to receive poor quality emails. They might not care about those forensic faults. There's no difference in them for them to actually do a fair comparison. And that's why a lot of these get in, because sometimes they're better quality email than the company itself is sending.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. So the most common ones, everyone in business at some point in time is expecting, like Alan said, the delivery or something to e-sign or something like that. And if you are waiting for that kind of email and something just happens to come because these guys are sending millions, then it just comes in and you're waiting for it, you won't pay as much attention to it. And those are the ones, if you're doing anything like signing or accepting or opening attachments, that kind of stuff, just take a second, even if you're expecting it. And a brief one on the cleverest ones, those are business email compromise, when it's something expected, when only a small thing has changed, or when you combine it with some kind of social engineering and then an email shows up. These ones are the kind of cleverest attacks. But just if you're moving money or doing anything, if you're moving money or giving out information, just take a second to check, especially if you're moving money, a quick call or a quick SMS to check with your colleague whether this is legit. Then that will help you. We've got another one on SF. How easy is it for SIM Forensics to be integrated into my existing IT security suite? Thanks for that one. Yeah, it's very easy, because we operate, our systems operate on outside of your networks. They don't process PII or anything like that. So we sit on top of your email security stack, and we passively monitor and make sure that your organization is sending out everything with a clean forensic profile to make it as hard as possible for your emails and your brand to be impersonated. So it's basically cloud, you bolt it on and off you go. And we also process all that data to show you who is spoofing, etc., etc. What else have we got?
Some information about our product. I think we will share our website information, and probably you'll be able to PM us and get some more information from our website.
Yeah, you can sign up actually for a sort of free threat exposure on this kind of activity, i.e. who is spoofing your brand globally. So that's a good place to start to learn more about our product. But thanks for that question. So yeah, we've reached the end of our webcast today. So thank you for your time joining us in this ICE71 Expert Series webcast. You can still PM your queries about the webcast topic on ICE's Facebook or LinkedIn pages, or you can go to our website, simforensics.com, and contact us directly. Till then, stay safe, take care, and goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.